Okay, in this video what we're going to do is we're going to look at what we did in our last lesson, which was create a database in MAMP, and we're going to connect it with a website. Okay, now I'm going to go through the whole process very quickly, but you can always pause the video and read the bits of code and that sort of stuff that I have in brackets. So as I go through quickly, make sure you're watching this at high resolution and that you can pause when you need to see the sections of code. Right, now in our last lesson, the first thing we did is we installed and we ran through how to run MAMP, okay? So I'm just going to hit stop, and then I'm going to hit start to make sure that you guys can remember that's how we did, we got MAMP going, and when we started it, it came up with this screen. And if you remember, we went to Tools, PHP MyAdmin over here, and we created a database called Cars Database. And we entered a table in there, and we entered some data in here as well. Now, that was in our last lesson. I'm going to flash up the code for that, so that if you missed that, you can go through and do that again right now if you would like to. But we did do it in class, right? So, if I go to here, now, remember when I said when we started MAMP, MAMP is stored in your applications folder. We go into MAMP and there's a folder called htdocs, and I've created a folder called cars, right? And this is where I had the SQL database that we created in our last lesson. So I'm going to flash this up on the screen to start with so you guys can remember where we're up to. Here it is here. So we started off with this one. This was how we created the database. We said create database, call it cars database, use car database, and then we're going to create a table, and these were all the settings. And we talked about data types and what all of this means. We did that in the last lesson. Then we went through and we put some data in. I've got a second SQL file here, and this is the way that we entered the data. Now remember, you can pause this video and look at both of those files if you're not sure about that, but we did do it in our last lesson. Now, what we really want to happen, I'm just going to go back to my online page here for MAMP, and I'm actually going to go back to this launch page here. And instead of going to Tools, I'm going to go to My Website. So I'm going to go to My Website here, and this will take us to where we want to run our website. Now, I haven't got anything in here yet, so I'm not going to do that yet, but that's where we're going to be going to. So from this launch page, we're going to go to My Website. Now, what do we want to run? We want an HTML file that lets us enter all of this information onto a website rather than having to go into the database. You don't want a user to go to your database and enter all of their data into the database. You want a front end. You want something that a user could see, like a website that could do that. Now, we also talked about with MAMP that all websites, the first page is normally index.html. However, to do this, to get this code to be entered in, we can't use HTML. We're going to use what's called PHP. So we need to start with our HTML page. So here I have 5 very, very simple lines of code, which essentially jump to a PHP page because the PHP's got logic in it that a website doesn't normally have, but we need this logic to work. So you can see here, we start with an HTML tag, opens up. We start with a head tag, opens up. And we've put in a little bit of metadata in here. And this metadata in here says, what I want you to do is I want you to refresh the content of this page straight away. 0 seconds. I don't want you to wait at all. I instantly want you to refresh and go to this new content. And the content I want you to go to is called connectiontest.php. That's what it wanted to do. So in other words, this is essentially a straight away, an instantly active hyperlink, which will send you to another page called connectiontest.php. So I've saved this file. I saved it as index.html, and I've put it into my MAMP, into my htdocs, and there it is there inside my htdocs right there, right? So index.html, inside my MAMP, inside my htdocs, and like I said, I made a folder called cars. Now, what does it do? It jumps to one called connection test. And so connection test, what we want to do is we want to test whether our website is talking to our database. And that's essentially what we really want them to do. We want them to discuss or to enter data through the database. So to do that, I've created another file here called connection test, and I've written out about 20 lines of PHP code, which helps you connect to the MAMP database that we already created. Now in this situation, MAMP has default values, and they are localhost, root, and then whatever the name of the database is that we created. Remember that this is running locally on your machine, so like a hacker can't get into this. It's not running on the web or anything, it's running on your local machine. So it doesn't matter if they see all of this information, someone watches this video, it doesn't matter because it's running on your local machine. Right, now let's see what this actually does. This creates a variable called host, and we've put in what's called localhost, which is a default MAMP setting. It asks what's the user, and we've put in root, which is the default MAMP setting, password, which is root, which is the MAMP default setting, and the name of the database, which is going to be car underscore database, which is the database we created. Now we can check some of these if we really need to. If we go back to our PHP MyAdmin and we click on our car database up here, you can see here it says database name car database. And if you go through and you look at some of the settings here, I don't know exactly where the settings are in here. You can go through and you can check, and it tells you that it's root and root and PHP. MyAdmin uses root, and then the name of the database. I'll have to find the exact one. It's in here. One of the settings is in here. Here it is here, right? So I'm in privileges, and it tells you the username's root, and localhost, and all those sorts of things, right? You don't need to know that. That's not important for what you're doing. I'm just showing you that you can get in there, right? That if you need to log in, they're the details, right? So you could copy this exactly the same. As long as you've made your database called car database, you could copy it exactly the same. So we've got these 4 variables right here. Now we're going to put all 4 of those variables into a new variable that tries to connect, I'm calling it con, to a SQL database. So it's making a connection, a new connection to a MySQL database, and use those 4 variables. So go and get that information from those 4 variables, right? So this is a connection, but at the moment this is still only just a variable itself. It's not actually making a connection. It's just a variable that says get all this information, and we're going to test it on a MySQL database. Now it checks the connection. It says if the connection, when you put in these 4 bits of information, comes back with an error, echo, which is kind of the same as print but on the screen, say no, not connected, so it didn't work. Otherwise, echo yes, it's connected, close the connection to the database, and finish our PHP file. So essentially this is what's going to happen. You've started your MAMP, you've got your database running, and you've got that information in there, and you know that it's in there. You're going to tell the user to go to a web page, which is index.html, and that's instantly going to send you to connection test. Connection test is going to use this information to log on and see if it's connecting to the database correctly. That's the first part of what we're going to do. So let's go back to MAMP here. Let's go to the website. And remember, I put a folder called cars. So I'm going to go /cars. And then I hit enter. And it, without me doing anything, it jumped straight away to this yes connected. So what it did is it went to the HTML page. The HTML page sent it to the PHP. The PHP checked the connection, and it came up saying yes connected. Now, what we've done is we've created our HTML file index, which it must have to get online. We've then checked the connection to make sure the connection worked, so all of this information is correct, and we know that that connection is working. Now, how do we make that so that the user can input information and that information goes onto the database? And this is where we get into a little bit more complicated file, which I'm going to go here. The first thing I'm going to do is I've called my new file cars.php. So I'm going to go back to my index.html. I'm going to change this from connection test to cars, and I'm going to save it. Now, doing that means that now it's not going to jump to that connection test anymore. It's going to jump to this new one called cars.php. And by doing that, I'm just going to make sure that it jumps to the right position. Now, the cars.php file, what I do is I use all of that first section of the PHP connection right there. I've put exactly the same bit of code there as we used on our connection test. It's nearly identical. Now, down here, instead of on the connection test we said echo not connected or yes connected, down here, if it fails, it'll say connection failed. But if it doesn't fail, then it's going to come and say, right, we're going to try and put some assets into the database. And we've given each of these assets, or these elements that you want to put into the database, we've given them different names, different variables. One of them is going to be the brand, and that's going to be posted on the website, and it's going to go under the heading of brand into the database. We've got the model, the year, the color, the type, and the fuel. They're all variables in PHP that we've created that all wait for something to happen. They wait for a post by the user, and they put them into these different categories. Then we run our SQL, and our SQL says insert into the table cars the brand, the model, the year, the color, the fuel, and the type and the fuel. And the values you're going to put in are the variables that the user has entered in up here that they've posted on the website. So whatever the user's typed in, that goes into this variable, that goes to here, which is then inserted into the SQL, right? So it's a kind of a three-step process. Then the query ends, and that's the end of the PHP. Now the PHP, remember, is like a little script that runs and does all of the actions. But we still haven't built the website bit where the user posts all this information. So at the moment, this is just hidden. Nothing here you will see on the screen. We need to build the actual website bit so that the user can add posts and as the brand, the model, the year, the color, the type. These are add means they're assets that are going to be added from the website. So now let's go down to the website section. And the website section starts like we start all of our HTML sites. It has HTML at the top, and then it'll have an HTML closing at the bottom down here. Right? It has a heading at the top, and we're going to call this one car database, and we've put a title in there. And then it has the body section. And the body section here has a heading, H2, we did that in class, is a heading, and it's going to say add a car. And the method is going to be post. Now this is important because we're making a form here and we're telling the method post. Up here for the PHP, it's looking for those posts. It's looking for a post that's going to be under the heading of brand. It's looking for that, okay? So let's go down and look at what we've got here. This is a word that'll come up on the screen, brand. And it'll have an input box that is waiting for text, and that input box name is brand, and it's required. The user has to put that in. If they don't put it in, nothing's going to work. The page will crash, it'll error. The next one, this will appear on the screen, model. It's going to have an input box that expects text, and it's going to be called model, and it's required. Now, remember, these match these ones here, right? So once you put information in that text box, it's stored into the word brand, which then goes into here, which is stored in the variable called $brand, which is then sent to the SQL, which goes up and stores it in the database, right? It's pretty logical. It's just step by step. Now we've got 5-6 different inputs in there: brand, model, year, color, type, fuel. And you can see some of them are required, and we've got simple text in here. These ones are not required, right? So in our database we said they could be null, right? These three had to be not null, okay? And year was just a year. It was an integer number. It wasn't a year layout. It was just an integer number. Then we have a button, and the button type is called submit. And that goes into the add section. It's going to be under the heading of add. And when that button is pressed, that add button is pressed, it sends a message up here to the PHP saying, I have been pressed. Now you can go through and start to make these changes, to make these commitments, right? So it needs to wait for that add button is pressed before any of this PHP will start to add things to your database. So they're the input boxes. Now, I've also added in this file a way for you to view the database, right? So it's got another little heading down here called view cars, and it's got a button. And this button again is a little post method submit. And if you click this, it says show all of the cars. Essentially, that's what it does. Now that needs its own little bit of PHP, which is down here. And this PHP says, okay, when you get, this one's called view, when this view button is pressed, there it is there, make the connection send the query, which is essentially select everything from cars, put it into the results variable, then lay this results variable out in a table with a 1 border and a padding of 5, and use these headings: ID, brand, model, year, color, that. So this is a query looking at the database just to select everything from cars. Now, down here it says, while the row equals the result, fetch associated echo. In other words, what this is saying is you have to actually lay it out as a table as long as it's found the right results from up here, right? If it didn't find results, it's not going to lay it out as a table, right? And if it doesn't lay it out as a table, then it's going to say, actually, no results. Now, you know these ones all represent table. These tags represent a table, right? These IDs represent the IDs from here, which are essentially they're just going to be words, but that's all from the query up here. Now, all of our names and our tables match. So, for example, this brand here matches the same brand that was up here, lowercase b, which matches the $ brand, which also, if we go back onto our database and we look at here and we look at the structure, there it is there, brand. So we always use it the same structure. You can't have one with a capital or one without a capital, or one with a brand and something written different. They have to be the same. The only one that's different is this one here, because these are the words that are printed on the screen. This is not searching for anything. This is just like putting headings on the screen. So the headings, I've put capital letters into the headings on the screen. Right, now let's go down and see what. That's it. Close the connection, end the HTML, end the page. So there is a lot there. And what I'll do is I'll stop the video on 2 different sections. Well, I'll stop you can pause the video here. So there's the PHP section if you want to pause the video there to copy that. Then we'll go down from line 23 down. You could pause the video there, and we've started our HTML there, and we get down to line 42. After you finish doing that, I can move down. We'll go from line 42 down to line 62. So we finished that top section. You could pause there, and then once we've done that, we can move down from line, let's go maybe from line 60 down. To finish your table, I'll just move down a little bit. There we go. So you can finish that table there. You can pause there, and then the last little bits close the connection essentially to the PHP. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to this. Now we need to see it run. Okay, so let's go back here. I don't need that database open. Let's click here. Let's go to /cars, and let's go enter. Now this time it's jumped using the index.html. It's jumped to this new PHP page. And so I can go through and I can enter some information. So the car could be a BMW. It could be a, I don't know, M5. The year could be 2005. I don't know, I'm just making it up. Silver. The type could be a sedan. And the fuel could be petrol. Okay, add car. So I've added that car, and you'll notice it cleared my table in here. Now I want to check to see if that car actually works. So I'm going to go show cars, and it should show all of the cars that we did from the other day, plus down here my new BMW M5 2005 silver sedan petrol. So it's worked, so I can confirm that it worked. Now this is a simple starting point. How to put entry boxes onto a web page so that they update your database. We can check the database. We can go to Tools, PHP My Admin. We can look at the database here, look at the cars, and you'll see down here number 5, BMW M5 2005 silver petrol. So it all worked. So that's it. That's how we can add to the database using a web page. If you're planning on making a website for your internal assessment, these are the steps you need to start with. You can put this down as tutorial on your methods, on your steps that you've been taking. And this is the first thing that you should do to make sure that you know how to connect to your MAMP database. If you're doing a Python file that connects to the database, then you need to watch the next video, because the next video is essentially the same concept, except it's Python connecting to a database instead of a website connecting to the database.